Jailton Almeida taking on none other than Derrick Lewis, which, by the way, in my humble opinion, probably one of the most underrated fights, and if not underrated fight cards altogether throughout the whole entire year. Why? For the simple fact that you have Francis Ngannou taking on Tyson Fury in a performance that he had put on, and then a week prior to that, you had the likes of Logan Paul taking on Dillon Danis, which was a big matchup in and of itself. And then on top of that, you had Islam Makhachev taking on Volkanovski for the second time as a surprise opponent. And then on top of that, you had Khamzat Chimaev, who is basically in the same boat as Tyson Fury, a guy that everybody expected to win, but for one reason or another, just wasn't able to pull the trigger in a way that people had expected them to pull out a blowout performance of some sort. Well, now in comes Derrick Lewis, which, by the way, really falls in line with this entire storyline and all these big fights that are happening. Well, why? For one, Derrick Lewis gave Francis Ngannou somewhat of one of the hardest fights of his career. And when I mean hardest, I don't mean in a painful matter. I don't mean in a matter that required him to, let's say, pull out all of his anaerobic lactic acid and having to be so tired by the end of it all that he just couldn't raise his arm anymore. Well, that's further from the truth, because guess what? Francis Ngannou looked like he barely tried in that fight. Why? Because Derrick Lewis is a knockout machine just like him. Maybe in a different way. Maybe Derrick Lewis is not as athletic as Francis Ngannou, but you couldn't tell by that fight that they had back in, goodness, when was that? Maybe 2018 or 2019, and that was just right before the pandemic, where Francis Ngannou came back and knocked out Rosenstruck within 20 seconds, just going in there with reckless abandonment. No details to his particular technical prowess of any kind, which is the reason why a lot of people didn't really rate him that high going into a boxing match with Tyson Fury, because the guy's a bit of a swinger. He doesn't really plot his shots in any kind of way, and this was the result that you got. However, he was taking on Derrick Lewis, who is a heavy knockout striker, right? So he had to be very careful, and it was a very lackluster match. It was only 3 rounds. Obviously, they had 15 minutes to work, but within those 15 minutes, it literally looked like 2 players that were playing a fighting game that abandoned their controller. At some point of the fight, it looked like that. Another example I could cite that had some similar appearances to that extent is maybe Israel Adesanya taking on Yoel Romero, another extremely lackluster situation they had going on. So because of that, Derrick Lewis won that fight, and not by much, but they had to give some kind of winner, and they gave it to the guy that at least attempted the most strikes in that particular fight, which was Derrick Lewis, and there was barely any shots that connected in that particular fight in the first place. So that's that. Now, here he is being shuffled in this weekly schedule of constant bombardment of combat sports, now having to follow up with Fury and Ngannou, and then his fellow UFC colleagues or co-workers, none other than Islam Makhachev and Volkanovski, and that whole entire card of UFC 284. Now he has to somehow go after those people, right? And now he has to pull out a performance in a very tough fight against Jailton Almeida. So what do I know about Jailton Almeida? This guy is one of the most well-rounded fighters that I have ever seen come into the heavyweight division. And why do I mention that? Why can't I just say that he's a well-rounded fighter overall in any weight class? Why did I specifically say heavyweight division? Well, because let's just be real. The heavyweight division is not exactly the most well-rounded. They aren't exactly always the most exciting guys, other than, of course, the brutality of the knockout that they can bring in these fights. Those are the only things that you can really consider with that. So this is a guy that literally walks around 210 pounds at most, 220 pounds after he eats a burrito, and I'm talking about Jailton Almeida, and now he's fighting in a heavyweight division with guys that weigh up to 270, 280. You look at Tyson Fury and Ngannou when they weighed in, they were like 280, 290 or something to that extent. Obviously, I'm exaggerating. You guys know the real weight when you guys saw that entire fight week. But they literally have to fight down to 265 if they were to fight in the heavyweight division, because MMA has weight limits, and rightfully so, because there's grappling aspects involved, and having a 280-pound guy lay on top of you, it's very difficult business. It's not the easiest thing in the world to deal with. And so because of that, guess what? They have to cut weight. So it kind of matters in a way, right? But still, nonetheless, a 280 guy is a 280 guy no matter how much you cut it. Even if they cut down to 265, the weight is still there. Now, with Jailton Almeida, what makes him very dangerous? Let's go into the technical aspects of this fight. The guy has great takedowns. He's got great wrestling skills. He's also got very well-rounded striking skills. He can punch, he can kick, he can produce great footwork to confuse his opponent. And not only that, he's from Brazil, so naturally, not to stereotype them in any way, but they're going to have great jiu-jitsu. It's just one of the things that's big within their national sport and their, I guess, programs that is available to them down there. So, he's a well-rounded fighter in a nutshell. With Derrick Lewis, what does he have? He has just one thing: incredible knockout power. This is a problem for a guy taking on somebody as well-rounded as Jailton Almeida. This is a very big problem for Derrick Lewis, because he's not going to have the wrestling to deal with Jailton Almeida. And not only that, he doesn't have the stamina, I think, to deal with the 5-round pressure that I believe Jailton Almeida is going to put on Derrick Lewis. My official prediction for this fight, before I sign off and for you guys to like and subscribe, I'm going to go with Jailton Almeida, 3rd round submission. Somewhere in the fight, he's going to rock Derrick Lewis. He's going to surprise him. He's going to let him know that, hey, I can strike with you too. I can show you that I am a formidable striker. Not only am I a formidable striker, I can probably put your butt down. And that's literally what he is going to do in this fight. When he rocks him, I think this is where the opportunity of a submission opening is going to come, whether that would be from, let's say, Derrick Lewis giving off his back, now being able to catch a rear naked choke, maybe getting Derrick Lewis down on the ground with an arm triangle, or perhaps maybe a Kimura lock. These are all virtually possible within this particular matchup. So don't forget to like and subscribe, and watch the entire content of this entire video, along with the other wonderful library that I've managed to build over this particular time frame of starting my YouTube video and now producing some of the best content that's out there in YouTube, inshallah. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you guys again soon.